The webinar is now broadcasting. The revolution will be televised. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so excited about today. I don't know why I'm extra excited about today, other than, one of my favorite people is here joining us. But yes, in case you don't know, which I don't know how you don't know because you clicked on this, but I am Kirk M. Samuels. I am the Intimacy Incubator. Hey, Megan, we haven't gotten to you yet, but just my personal mission statement is: with strength, wisdom, gentleness, and mercy, I co-create a world of intimacy and unconditional connection by teaching and inspiring 1 million men how to live free from internet pornography. That's a lot of words, but man, that's a lot of depth too. And I'm so excited today on this Uplift Her call to introduce someone, again, one of my favorite people around. Let me introduce to the world, to at least this little bit of a world, one Mrs. Megan West. How are you this morning?
I'm good. It's early, but I'm good. I'm watching the sunrise from my window.
Where are you, like literally facing east out of your window?
Yeah, I am. Wow. Yes.
Right on. Well, you look great for this. I mean, you look better than I do. I mean, man, for this early in the morning, that is fantastic. That is fantastic. So how I met you is actually kind of secondhand. I met your husband first. This call is not about him. He'll have his turn in the hot seat at some point. But I met your husband when he became my doctor, actually, referred to him. And now, man, I think he's been my doctor for 12 years, 13 years, something like that. And then come to find out that the other half of his office was a counseling practice, and you were over there. So and so then we met, and now we've actually become great friends and that sort of thing as well. So tell me, where are you? Let's just start off with some basics. Where are you from? I mean, what's your? Where did you grow up? What was the mean streets you grew up in?
I grew up in the heartland of Kansas. So I grew up in a small town in Kansas. And as a child, I used to come out to Denver to ski or with my parents. And I always felt like I want to live here someday. I love it here. And so gratefully, my husband, who's from Florida, agreed. And we ended up in Denver. And we started this practice. He has a medical practice. I have a counseling practice about 12 years ago.
Wow.
And we started a counseling center about 1.5 years ago. And yes, my husband knows all your secrets. I don't.
Actually, I was about to ask, like, does he tell you all business? But I don't even want to know. I don't even want to know. Yeah,
he doesn't tell me anything.
I can't hide much. He knows all my junk. He knows all my story. Although, I had this kind of physical transformation, if you will. I lost 55 pounds and that sort of stuff. And so over that period of time, though, he was kind of saying like, hey, what are you doing? And I told him, and then, I don't know if that led to it or not, but, once I kind of got into the class and teaching the class, and he actually came and he sat in on the class. He legit, he was there and plugged in. He took the class. He even brought your son. That was fantastic. And he co-signed on the class, like, yep, you're not lying about any of this stuff. As a matter of fact, he's quoted on the back of my book. And you all are part of my very first book. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. So Kansas. So did you go to school in Kansas, like higher education? I'm trying to give you a chance to plug your alma mater.
Yeah, I went to Kansas State University. And then after Kansas State University, I got my master's at Denver Seminary, became a counselor at that point.
Wow. What is that when you, as far as becoming a counselor, what is that? Counseling, when you get a counseling degree at a seminary, what does that involve? Like, what kind of an educational process is that? Like, what kind of things how do you become a counselor?
Yeah, so I think I went 3 years. It's 2 years of post-graduation or post-college. And they teach you statistics and psychology and theories. And I also went to seminary, so I also got theology with that. And it was a certified state program. So once you get out, you start working, but you're not licensed for 2 years. You have to do a 2-year internship, and you have to do 2 years of supervision. And at that point, you take a big test, you get your license. So it took me about 2 years after I graduated to finally be licensed.
Well, and then how do you decide after you get that degree? How do you decide like what area you're gonna kind of focus on? Is that just totally up to you on what you gravitate towards?
Yeah, it's completely up to you. I worked at a psych hospital for a couple of years, which was a really great education. I did that near Chicago. And then at that point, I knew after that I wanted to go into private practice. And after I had my son, a couple of years after I had my son, we started the practice, and I started my private practice in Parker.
Wow. Which, I mean, that kind of hits close to home. Part of my story, it's even in my book, that my father was in and out of a mental hospital during my young years. So I did some internships in a mental hospital. I say that loosely. But yeah, so that dynamic of, we used to go visit him on the weekends, and then we used to do counseling at the mental hospital and that sort of stuff. And so that would have
been me. I would have let you in the unit. I would have done your counseling sessions. Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty interesting. Pretty doggone interesting. So, and have you worked with people like in a specific, whether it's men, women, what kind of like background? Is it addiction, trauma, that kind of stuff, or?
Yeah, I definitely do. I work with adults, and I work with teenagers, and I work with troubled or difficult marriages. But when I work with adults, I do depression and anxiety. I do sexual abuse. I do trauma. I do EMDR, which is a technique for trauma victims. It's very successful. So I also do that. That takes about 10 sessions for anybody with trauma. And yes, and then the older teens I work with. I don't normally do kids. I have a couple of kids right now, but overall I refer those out to like a child psychologist or somebody that specializes in play therapy. I don't.
And so, but you have at your office, you have a team of counselors, of therapists, right?
Yeah, there are 4 of us right now. We just hired our 5th counselor. She'll be coming in probably in about 6 weeks, but they each have their own specialty. We have a lady that has a dog that comes in with a therapy dog.
Wow.
We have the one we just hired specializes in eating disorders. We have a male that does Matt is his name. He does really great with teenagers. So there's a wide variety of us.
Wow. And so I told you you need to save me an office, because one day I'm gonna set up shop in there. You got a nice.
I got the perfect one for you with the mountain view.
Nice. Are you gonna charge me extra for that office?
No, not you.
Right. So anyhow, well, so it sounds like you've worked with, you mentioned a lot of couples, and it sounds like a lot of people you work with have people directly in their lives. And so I want to tackle today, I want to get into the whole notion of codependency. That's a term that's kind of been thrown around a lot. It's used a lot. And to be honest, I'm not 100% sure that people really understand what codependency is, and or how to recognize it. But just to begin with, what is codependency?
Yeah, so codependency, if you ever look it up, or if you've ever read a book about codependency, the definition is very vast, very wide. A lot of people have different opinions on what it is. And actually, it started about 30 years ago with addiction, people that had addictions. So 30 years ago in the 70s, they started realizing that people were struggling with addictions, they started programs for addicts. They started kind of inpatient programs for addicts. And they realized that the spouses of the addicts also had all kinds of problems. So they did all this research, and all of them kind of had the same problems. And so they labeled it as codependency. So it really started out just with spouses of addicts, and they called them codependents. Well, now the definition is much wider, and it's really for any dysfunctional relationship. We'll always look and see if there is codependency within the relationship. So the definition of codependency, or the one I like, is when a person is completely dependent on another person and they feel completely responsible for that person's feelings and that person's actions. So if you don't mind, I like to use an example. I use this all the time in my practice, but if you had like a flat surface, and I don't know as a kid if you played with magnets, but if we had this flat surface and we took two magnets and we put the magnets down on the surface, you'll notice that they'll either attract each other, the magnets, or they'll separate from one another. And the way I describe codependency, when you flip those magnets a certain way and they attract each other, that's codependency. They're completely dependent on one another. And so if the addict or the person in the relationship moves over here, immediately the codependent's there. If they move down here, immediately the codependent's there. And I don't mean physically move, I mean emotionally move. And so they're completely enmeshed and attached to one another, and they don't have their separate identity. So if you flip one of those magnets over and they separate, that's a more healthy relationship. You each have your own identities, and you're each able to develop and grow as a person, but you're able to be still in a loving relationship, but not completely attached and enmeshed.
Wow. So the way you just described that, it sounds like codependency is not the goal. It sounds like codependency is kind of not it's not the destination that you want to be traveling towards in a relationship, right?
No, you do not want to be in a codependent relationship. It's unhealthy. There's a lot of anger, there's a lot of frustration, and you have a person that never develops self.
Wow. And so in the kind of the world that the pond that I swim in, just helping guys, with helping guys get free from pornography, I think you probably have that dynamic a lot in terms of his, whether he accepts it as an addiction or not, but having his world kind of dictate her world in terms of his acting out or his consumption and how that affects her, and then the two kind of dynamics playing off each other. And quite honestly, because I've experienced it, I can also say that I think that also works in reverse in terms of him being codependent on her. If she's having a bad day, then that can drive him to go medicate, that day. That can drive him to go like, oh, I can't stand my wife. She's whatever. And then I got to go act out in some kind of a way. So I almost wonder I don't know if in every situation, but in this case, if that could be, is codependency always two-way, or would that be a scenario where it's two-way?
It could be one way. So when they did all this research with addicts, it can be the person is an addict, and so the codependent spouse, the person that lives their life with them, they end up protecting them or trying to control their actions or making sure they don't drink or making sure they're okay. So they spend all this time focused on the person that's addicted. And so that person would be codependent. But in a relationship, they both can be codependent as well. So you can have the addict codependent on the wife, and the wife dependent or codependent on the husband. So yeah, it can go either way, and both can be codependent, or just one can be codependent, spending all of her time trying to make her spouse okay and happy and unable to say no to her husband. So it can go both ways, or it can go one way.
Yeah.
But the probability, like if I'm talking to women right now and they're in a relationship with a husband that's addicted to porn and they know he's addicted to porn, it's very possible that they are codependent.
Wow. I'm really kind of processing everything through the filter of not only my own experience, but other guys as well, in terms of, that I work with. And, and yeah, I'm really I'm trying to process what that looks like. And to me, I can see probably in most cases, I don't know, maybe I could definitely see both. I mean, I can absolutely see both. I mean, because, on one hand, he's acting out, and she's probably the one that's the most, or at least the first, impacted, which is why the target audience for my book is women, to try to explain to her what's going on in his fish tank. But at the same time, I do think it becomes he's in a reactive mode to life, and to the pressure of life, and to the temperature of life. And so he ends up acting out in ways that that may be a residual effect of their relationship, and again, maybe her presence in his life. And so, I mean, I can absolutely see that work in both ways. And so, I mean, then obviously first of all, the big question is, how would someone know if they are codependent?
Well, if you go online and you look at the indicators of a person that's codependent, it ranges from 50 to 150 things, and identifiers. So I actually picked out some that I feel like are really important to know if you're codependent. The first is you feel really responsible for the other person's feelings. And so if the person is having a bad day, you try to fix it. If the person is sad and down, then you automatically feel sad and down. It's kind of whatever they're feeling, the other person is feeling, and anything that they're going through, you take it all on yourself. So you have your emotions as well, but you also have their emotions on top of that. Another indicator is a person with codependency, they cannot say no. You may have expectations in the family, your spouse may have expectations of you, and you follow right along with those. You also may feel very uncomfortable doing some things. I think about porn and sexuality and those sorts of things. So just to cut to the chase, women especially, can feel like their husbands ask things of them sexually that they don't feel comfortable with, and they'll say yes to those things. And they'll do those things just to make their spouse happy. A codependent is unable to make decisions. They find decisions very difficult. They want to make sure that their spouse is okay with that decision. They'll almost always go along with what they want to do. It can be as simple as they can go to a store and pick out a shirt or a pair of pants, and they're not able to decide what they like. They need somebody else's thoughts and somebody else's opinion on those things. A lot of times codependents come from a dysfunctional home or an abusive home. And so you learn certain behavior patterns when you're in a dysfunctional home. And one of those is how to not express your feelings. So you don't express your feelings. You don't know what your feelings are. You don't know what you're experiencing. You're not in tune with those things. So a codependent person they don't know how they feel, what they're interested in. And so they need to learn how to start identifying those feelings. So interestingly, though, what I'm describing sounds like a very submissive person. Mm-hmm. But actually, the codependent struggles with anger. They have a lot of anger. So if you think about not having boundaries, not being able to say no, having all kinds of feelings that you can't identify, these things build up over time. And there can be blow-ups and lots of anger and bitterness. And a really good example that a lot of codependents do. Do you like examples?
I love examples.
Okay. So something that codependents will do is they'll be blow up. They'll have this big blow up. They have all these feelings that have kind of just overflowed like a volcano. So they blow up, they get angry, they say, I've had it. I'm done. I'm through with this. I'm out of here. I'm moving out. This relationship's over. Well, a codependent, they rarely ever leave. Never actually leave. So they do this big blow up, throw all these threats out, and then they never ever leave or never even act on it or separate or so their anger then dies down and then they start the whole cycle over again.
Now that right there, you just hit home in terms of a household where there's where the male in the relationship is kind of porn driven. I do see that at some point his spouse, his significant other, it does turn into some form of anger in terms of even if it's below the surface, and it's one of those things that, you know, and it's my opinion, but women grow things inside of you, and at some point it has to come out. At some point when it grows and it becomes a full term thing, then you all push it out. And so, but I think that anger grows, and maybe some other things too, grows inside of her. And then at some point, and yeah, it is one of those things that she may threaten, but not leave. But then, probably more often than not, at a certain point, she's had enough and she can't do it anymore. And that's why, 6 out of 10 divorces involve someone with a porn problem. That's why most divorces are filed by women. And so, I think after a while, she just can't put up with it anymore. And for her, it's actually infidelity in terms of the way she processes it. So she can't stand with him cheating on what equates to tens or hundreds or thousands of women at a time in their relationship. And so when you hit on that anger thing, I can absolutely, I could see that for sure, that it just turns into some kind of anger or bitterness. And so, I mean, and maybe this question is just too huge for the moment, for the few minutes we have left, but then how do you flip those magnets? How do you take back your identity? I mean, and again, maybe there's not even enough time for that, but I mean, first of all, let's just say, is that even possible to do?
Oh, it's definitely possible. I can give you a few things that would be helpful if somebody feels like, I am codependent, or I feel like I'm codependent. Some things to start thinking about and some things to start working on. The first is online, there's an assessment that you can take, and it's free, and it's called Friel Assessment. And I think it was by Dr. Friel. And he actually started the whole thing in the 70s, but it's Friel, Friel assessment. And what it is, it's a questionnaire. I think there's about 60 questions, and you can go on there and you fill out what applies to you, and you'll end up with a number. And then you can see if you're high in codependency or not. So that's a good place to start. Also, when you talked about flipping those magnets, and you do, that's the goal, that you have a separate self, a separate identity. And the couple of things that you can do or start today and do on your own is learning to identify your feelings. And we basically learn 2 feelings, or actually 3: happy, sad, and angry. And so when you notice feelings coming up, I would want you to go deeper than happy, sad, or angry. Really identify if you feel rejected or abandoned or guilty or overwhelmed, and really dig deeper into those things and really start to understand what you're feeling and how you're feeling. Another thing that you can start doing is thinking about your boundaries. And a good way to start is when you're faced with a decision, What shirt should I wear? What pants should I put on? What should I make for dinner? And you're having a really hard time with these decisions, I want you to stop. I want you to take a minute, and I want you to actually make a decision and follow through with that. And you can also, you start with the little things and then you work into the bigger things. And if people start asking you to babysit, or your husband or your spouse asks something of you that you don't feel comfortable with, I want you to say no and start to work on saying no. And as you do that, as you identify your feelings, as you start saying no, then those magnets are going to start to separate, and you're going to start developing kind of your own identity, which is really, really important. Another thing that you can do is, there's a book called Codependency No More. It's a long-standing book. It's a great book. It's by Melody Beattie. It's Beattie. And she was actually an addict and a codependent. So she writes this book from that perspective and gives really good ideas and thoughts about how to overcome that and how to start working on those things. Something else that codependents really struggle with is a low self-esteem. They don't feel worthy. They don't feel like they deserve anything. They don't feel like they amount to anything. And another thing you can do is really start combating or fighting those thoughts in your mind, that you are worthy, that you do have something to offer, that you are important, and that your feelings, your thoughts, and all your decisions really do matter, and start believing those things.
Wow. I mean, man, that was, you just gave some meat right there. That was like a whole meal. That was fantastically good stuff. I mean, that was usable and tangible stuff. Wow, I mean, as we wind down here, I mean, I think it's, first of all, worth noting, and we didn't even get into this today. I told you this was going to go by pretty quick. We didn't even get into the kind of the class, the group that you're working on, that you / I'm just gonna tag team that we are working on, but mainly you, for women, and to address probably some of these issues. And so and that's coming later on this year, and we'll actually having you back on in a few months, and so, you know, hopefully there'll be more information. But we got so much going on. You got I'm looking at your bookshelf. I'm sure my book is somewhere up there on that bookshelf. But just make me feel better. Just say, yeah, it's up there.
Yes, it is.
So yeah, I mean, we have way more coming, and we're so excited about that. I'm so excited to have you on. And just really quickly, how can people get a hold of you if they want to get a hold of you?
So our practice is Counseling with Care. We're in Parker. My number is 303-805-2315. And then they can always email me if they have a thought or a question about codependency or anything else, really. And that's mwest@parkerfamilycare.com. So mwest@parkerfamilycare.com.
Awesome. And then, you know, I mean, Megan, you are a fantastic resource. I mean, you know, I've definitely pointed people in your direction. I put very few names up in my class on my screen, and your name and your husband's name are right there. And he was even in the room to see that every time I teach a class that you all's names up there. And so I hold you in very high regard. Thank you for everything that you do. I am here as a resource also for anyone. Again, my mission is to co-create a world of intimacy and unconditional connection. And I do that by teaching and inspiring men how to get free from internet pornography. So I'm here as a resource at kirkmsamuels.com. And I want to encourage you all, to anyone, to tune in. Here in a couple of weeks, we're going to be talking about financial literacy. We're kind of flipping like a whole different, you know, we got so many topics, and so, you know, be ready to tune in a couple of weeks, because we're going to go kind of in that direction. And just my last encouraging word for you, for anyone that's watching, is, you know, sometimes the hardest thing you can do is to let go. And And when I say that, I'm not encouraging anyone to let go of a person or a relationship. Sometimes I think the easiest thing we can do is to just let go of a person. Sometimes the hardest thing we can do is to let go of some intangible things like codependency, like unforgiveness, like things that just don't serve you. And sometimes we have to let go of things that don't serve us, those intangible things in our lives, and move to a place where we can become more healthy. But you are worth it. Um, you are worth way more than most of this world is going to give you credit for. So whoever you are, I just want to encourage you in that, and encourage you that you are strong enough to let go of some things that don't serve you, particularly things like codependency. And you have resources out here. I mean, and two of us are here on the screen today. So feel free to reach out to us, and we are here to serve. That's what we do, is to help people and serve people. So with that, Megan, I appreciate you. I thank you so much, especially this early in the morning. You got sunlight now coming in your window. And I really appreciate you taking the time to really help some people out here today. And we will see you in a couple months. Well, I'll probably see you before then, but we'll see you on this screen here in a couple months, and we'll be in touch again. So thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.